The entity has no limits in who it takes. Though we might have thought that initially it was an instance of wrong place, wrong time, new aspects have shown that just like the killers, the survivors might have been planned, influenced, and taken before they got grabbed. Now, with survivors and killers, there are connections that most of us don't see, but are very interesting when you look deep into it. So in this video, we'll be running through each chapter and just running through what the connection between the survivor and the killer is. Now, we'll preface this by saying I won't be focusing on any original characters or killers. Those weren't linked with chapters and not necessarily connected with anybody. I also won't be focusing on any licensed characters. This goes for Lori, Myers, Demo, Steve, and Nancy, and all the rest. Typically because their connections are rather, well, self-explanatory. It's kind of easy to know how Demogorgon connects with Steve and Nancy, how Lori connects with Myers. You don't really need me to go on a whole long-winded rant. As much as I think you guys enjoy my smooth, buttery voice, I don't think you need to have that. So, their criteria will be, they have to be a DLC character, and they have to be an original chapter. So, we'll be running through The Last Breath, Flesh and Mud, Sparks of Madness, Lullaby in the Dark, Curtain Call, Shattered Bloodlines, Darkness Among Us, Demise of the Faithful, Cursed Legacy, and Chains of Hate. So, let's get ready, pull up your socks, and sit down as we dive into the fog and dive into just how the survivors and the killers are connected, whether it be through story or theme. Let's start with our last breath, but the first chapter. In this, we see the survivor, Nia Carlson, and the killer, the nurse, or Sally Smithson for those who want to be fancy. These characters, separated by multiple years, somehow are connected by one place, the Cronus Pren Asylum, a place that saw a brutal massacre as one woman was pushed to the brink of insanity and snapped. This woman, Sally Smithson, went crazy and massacred all in the asylum. Those who were good, those who were bad, and those who had no place being killed. Orderlies, members of the staff, and patients all felt her wrath. And then, whilst being taken away, the people taking her also succumbed to the same fate. As the nurse, Sally Smithson, disappeared, taken by the entity. Now, Nia Carlson doesn't seem to connect in theme or character alike. However, being a rebel girl, alienated from being forced away from her home, she became a rebel, tagged government buildings as a way to go against her family. But this lifestyle led to a bet, and this bet led her to tag the Cronus Pren Asylum. When going in, she never returned. A victim of happenstance, wrong place, wrong time. Or maybe the entity had always been watching Nia, always watching her rebellious nature, and saw that she was worth plucking up. And all it needed was her to be in the right place, in the right area of the massacre. And the second she entered it, the connection was established. Nia and the nurse represent a location and a connection of an area that held such a brutal and dark past. After that, let's delve into the flesh and the mud. In this, we'll see two people linked by superstition. One in the beliefs of her elders, symbols, and other beliefs. One shouldn't mock the dead. One should be careful with powers they don't know. Lisa, unfortunately, succumbed to terrible circumstances and terrible luck indeed. Taken and kidnapped by cannibals, forced into an area of torture, mutilation, and cannibalism. With her last breath and her last moments, she etched those superstitions, etched the symbols of her elders onto the ground. She called for revenge, called for anybody to help her out. And the entity answered those superstitions, answered those symbols. And she became the hag. Lisa Sherwood was dragged and transformed into what we know today. But what of the survivor? Another person drenched in superstition. Ace Visconti. A man who lived on his silver tongue, charm, and good looks. His symbols and his superstition, unlike the hag, weren't of magical qualities, but that of luck. Holding on to being the lucky guy with a silver tongue that could get himself out of any trouble, Ace was a gambler who ranked up debt. Eventually, his debt caught up with him and he was forced to flee, forced to run. But maybe the entity noticed him running, noticed this man fleeing, and decided to give him an area to go to. An area of torture and a menacing, unending nightmare. Here we have two people, Lisa Sherwood and Ace Visconti, linked by superstition. A connection so unbelievable that you might be able to tell folk tales about it. Next up, as we delve into the madness of a man and the madness of a young woman, here we'll see the connection of a crazed man and a girl who took her ambition too far, and very interesting connections that are based off their entire characters. Today, the Sparks of Madness introduce Fung Min and the Doctor, or Herman Carter. Herman Carter, a young scientist with the propension for the sadistic, was given free rein in the Memorial Institute, able to work with his own desires. He's already shown his sadistic nature with the tests they provided him, but now he had no shackles, no restrictions, and he delved into his madness, became obsessed with his research and experiments, to the point where he turned all those into Larry's Memorial Institute into either corpses or vegetated people. We also have Fung Min, a girl who found a world of escape in video games. Her parents didn't approve of her new pursuit, so eventually she cut out from them and made her own life. She filled stadiums with adoring fans and people who cared, but she too delved deeply into her obsession, delved deeply into training too much, practicing too much, sleeping too little. Such an obsession made her slip, lose focus. Eventually, with her losses weighing down on her mind and the anxiety that it brought, she delved into a new depression and a new spiral. Going to bars to find places of people who didn't know of her esports failures. She would often wake up in places she didn't know, places that were unfamiliar to her. One time she woke up in the realm of the entity. Now, on a serious note, to describe someone that the Doctor had bases on. A man curing internet addictions with electroshock therapy. Brutal acts, as those who have been admitted said it was severely painful. This man had parents pull their young teenage children or their young adults into his services to be brutally tortured for them to release their addictive habits. So ironic that a character based off of this man who decided to cure kids and teens of their internet addiction would get a gamer as a survivor, and one whose gaming addiction led to her downfall. Not only are these survivors linked in the themes of their base connections, the cruel doctor experimenting on people delving into obsession, and the gamer girl delving into her obsession, but also linked in real life basis of their connections as well. The connections to a man who tried to cure kids of internet addiction in torturous ways, making a very torturous doctor indeed, and a girl addicted to gaming, linked by obsession and linked by real life cruelty. That's the story of Herman Carter and Fung Min. After such a depressing and depraved entry, let me calm you down with a lullaby for the dark. In this section, we'll be talking about David King and the Huntress, or Anna. Now, from what we know of the Huntress, we see a woman brutally taken away from her mother, became feral and territorial, protecting the little girls like her mother once did to her. She protects her area and protects her little babushkas, hunting down people and soldiers alike, grazing up her hunting skills from first animals to humans. We have here a woman determined to protect her home, her territory, and her homemade family with any means necessary, even if it means cutting down brutalians that come her way. This connects to our survivor, a person who never really knew true friends until he had nothing. Those who hang around David King hang around him because of his money and his background. But when he lost all of that, he saw who was his true friends, who stuck by him when he had nothing and helped him out. Once David learned that, he had a reason to fight, a reason to protect those who are his friends. For that, he would risk his own life, beat up any foe, even if it meant sacrificing himself in the process. These two people, a Russian killing machine, due to the trauma she experienced at a young age and her feral raising, and a privileged man with nothing left but the friends he needs to protect, are linked in the fact that they are protectors. Protectors who protect their family, their friends, and all they held to be important. From protectors, we spiral on to something quite different. With the final curtain call, we bring up Kate Denson and the Clown, or Jeffrey Hawkes, or Kenneth Chase. These two and their connections are probably one of the most fun, entertainers in a sense. Jeffrey Hawke, Kenneth Chase, or whatever his alias goes by, the Clown, uses his disguise and his new persona to lure unsuspecting people in. As an entertainer, people have a necessary letdown when it comes to being around a clown, dropping their guard, allowing them to be easy prey, allowing him to lure them into unexpected situations where he could gas them and have his fun. Kenneth Chase, a brutal man and a collector of fingers and momentums, became the clown to fool those around him, an entertainer only by name, and a sadistic murderer by actions. How does this relate? Well, quite the opposite, in fact. Kate Denson, the actual entertainer, a woman wanting to give back to the people and back to the community who helped her, an inspirational girl whose melody and songs touched the hearts of all those around her. Many came to see her musical talents, to hear her play a song. She linked a community and was always true to herself. Kate Denson was an entertainer in her own right until the entity saw her special talents, and though it took a couple of tries, snapped her up. We see this connection in the guise of entertainers. One, a fake entertainer using it as a guise and a mask to infiltrate people and bring them down. One, a genuine entertainer using it to bring people's spirits up and show just who she truly is. Once the curtain falls, the illusion of what we're talking about is shattered. Shattered like the bloodlines of this chapter. This, we see Adam Francis and Rin Yamaoka. Rin Yamaoka, who inherited the rage of her ancestors, the anger that dwelled within her, and the anger that was brought to light by her bullies and eventually her murderous father. Now is in the entity's realm, her rage and spirit unsatisfied, not getting her revenge, she hunts down the survivors. But we also have Adam Francis, a man who grew up from nothing, who dealt with hardships in his time, eventually getting an opportunity to teach in Japan. Intelligent and responsible, he made the best of his situation. Even though he didn't know that much Japanese, he learnt enough to get by until a brutal train crash sent him to the entity's realm. But what are their connections, you ask? How does this Japanese girl, filled with rage and inherited hatred, dealt a bad hand, connects to this man? Honestly, their connection is a little bit hard to say, as they don't seem to have any outright connecting points, not even by theme of character. It also seems like a bit of a cop-out to just say, lol, we're both in Japan, so I'll have mine on this. But if I were to think of any connection between these two, it would definitely have to be their family values. Adam holding into what his uncle taught him and using it to further his life, his strict rule that he used to grow up and live better, and Rin inheriting the rage of her ancestors, the power of Kuzan, Yamaoka, and let's not forget her murderous father, who triggered her final transformation. Flimsy, but again, give me it.